I have never felt more Puerto Rican than I do right now. Now, that's pretty interesting because I've been pretty Puerto Rican all of my life. Besides all of this, I had all the typical trappings of a mainland Puerto Rican upbringing. I learned English from Sesame Street, I ate pernil at Thanksgiving, and I missed the first 2 weeks of every spring semester because I was in Puerto Rico celebrating Three Kings Day. But this recently has been different. You see, at home, my Puerto Ricanness was just a way of life, but everywhere else it was a tool. And I learned to pull it out in two specific situations. One, in small talk, when it could be used to make people feel appropriately multicultural, as they shared with me their passion for salsa dancing or their love of plantains. Or two, as the setting of a story in which I erased most of my lived experience so that I could take the deepest and darkest parts of my life and hold them in contrast to my triumphs, creating an Alger-esque type of tale that unfailingly opened doors for me and made everyone else feel better about their role as gatekeeper. I repeated and was rewarded for this story so often that I began to believe it myself. You see, if we define education equity merely as ensuring that demographics don't predict outcomes, you can put me squarely as a tick mark in the win column. And while I would use many words to describe my educational experience, equitable would not be one. And that's because equity is not a goal. It's not a set of metrics. It's not a checklist. It's a way of being. It's a mindset. It's a practice. We like to say equity is a verb. And over the last 29 days, as I have felt the ground fall out from under me time and again, I've been reminded of this because just as equity is a verb, so is inequity. And inequity never stops moving. A routine has emerged for me since the morning of September 20th. I wake up, I call my mom, I ask for an update. You see, most of my family still lives on the island of Puerto Rico, most of them in Cabo Rojo, a small town on the southwest tip of the island. It's about as far as you can get from where the eye of Maria made landfall on the island, so they were spared most of the devastation that some of my other family has faced. Having lived for generations literally on the side of a mountain in the center of the island, a number of my great aunts and uncles' homes have completely disappeared, simply slipped off of the mountainside. For most of the first week after Maria, we had no contact or news from our family, and I and the rest of my family was paralyzed by the fear and the worry. On day 6, we finally got word that our immediate family and relatives were all okay, and that fear and that worry turned into a feeling of impotence. As someone with a huge internal locus of control, this was literally unbearable to the point where I needed an escape valve and got the island of Puerto Rico tattooed on my arm. It was incredibly cathartic. But it's not the tattoo that makes me feel more Puerto Rican now than ever before. It's the fact that the storm finished destroying the walls that I had built, separating my culture at home with who I was with friends and colleagues. I am now Puerto Rican both at home and at work, in private and in public. The storm was a moment of reconciliation for me, helping me realize that my lived reality and my experience could be a really powerful lens that I could use to interrogate and understand the world as it is today, and to start to build and create the world I want to leave for my daughter. I was paralyzed for a very long time and didn't know what to do. I had read a piece by Yarimar Bonilla, and she wrote, "Vulnerability is not simply a product of natural conditions, it is a political state and a colonial condition." And it reminded me of my own power and the framework which my organization had helped to create that allowed me to move forward after Maria. So the premise of our work is this, that racism and inequity, and therefore suffering, are products of design. The hope in that is that they can be redesigned. So it's time for me and for all of us to recognize the creative agency that we hold and the creative agency that's in each and every person around us. We have to believe that we are all designers and take up the task of redesigning the interactions, interventions, and institutions that we are all a part of to not just strive for some equitable end goal, but to actually be equity in motion.